West Ham 2, Arsenal 5. It's just me, guys. I'm the only one standing on the Babbling channel for this weekend's review show. It was bad. Not as bad as I think people initially thought, having reviewed the tapes back, and we're going to get into the breakdown of each of the goals that happened in that first half. Second half is a distant memory. We're not going to go into too much detail there, but there's a lot of glaring issues still there in the face with West Ham, and we need to address them very quickly. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and yeah, let's get into the breakdown as we normally do. The sooner the better, I'm sure, for many West Ham fans. But these were the lineups as we went into things. So unchanged from West Ham from our win up in Newcastle just 5-6 days ago. So we were kind of expecting that to be the case. And then for Arsenal, it was kind of similar to what we predicted. The only differences were Jorginho for the injured Partey, and Trossard came in for Martinelli on the left-hand side. But other than that, it was expected. Pretty much full strength from them from their midweek clash against Sporting. In terms of the statistics going from this game, Arsenal 60% possession to West Ham's 40, 3.6 XG to our 1.54, again, inflated by their 2 penalties, 12 shots to their 16, 5 on target to their 7, 2 big chances compared to Arsenal's 5, 1 big chance miss compared to Arsenal's 0. And yeah, you can see they obviously dominated the ball a little bit more, 10 corners to our 2, which was a big talking point as well. So my overall feelings before we get into the breakdown of all the goals were it scared me going into it, having that lineup. And I mentioned it in the preview that if we play that midfield three of Souček, Soler, Paqueta, and we're telling Souček to push on similar to what we did against Newcastle and letting Soler and Paqueta be the build-up players, it's going to leave massive gaping issues and kind of massive spaces for Arsenal to work for. And look, Arsenal were very good. They played the game very well tactically. They took their time with set pieces, which we're also going to get into. But I do think there were a few things in the build-up to Arsenal's goals that we need to highlight, as well as the West Ham free kick that we're going to get into. Obviously, we don't want to be biased. So let's start with what happened in the initial phases. And we mentioned it in the preview, very, very explicit that Arsenal are going to want to start fast. They're going to be aggressive in their press. They're going to try and set the tone, similar to how they did in Portugal. And they're going to look to capitalize on any mistake or any set piece or any issue that we have with our defensive structure. And that's exactly what happened just 9-10 minutes into the game. So we saw this against in the Sporting preview that Arsenal like to huddle at the back post and then make their moves into the box as Saka in swings the corner, or if it's Rice on the other side. And just highlight this there. So Gabriel, you can see there, he's the one that's going to always be the target for Arsenal. We need to be paying more attention to this. And it was way, way too easy for him to escape this. However, saying that, I do think there was a foul, but we'll get onto that in a second. So Saka hasn't even taken the corner at this point. And if I move it forward, I think 2 or 3 seconds, Saka still hasn't taken this corner. So yeah, there's been 5 seconds since that last frame in this one. And you can see the movements that have taken place before Saka's even kicked the corner. And you can kind of see there on Todibo, you can see Timber's blocking him off a little bit there. Calafiori's coming in front of Wan-Bissaka, making that move to block him off, which is going to then free up Gabriel. And Antonio's kind of left isolated, and he should have stayed on Gabriel, but it's very difficult to do that when it becomes congested. And, you know, Arsenal's set piece routine is fantastic. However, saying that, I do think there was a foul. And as the ball comes in, so Saka's just about to kick the ball here. Just before we get onto that foul, you can see here the movements that Arsenal have done. So they're blocking that space and they're vacating it for Gabriel to have a free header at it. That's the game plan from Arsenal. It works very well. And if Antonio's dropped off of Gabriel and allowed him to run in front, this is what will happen. And he's got a free run at it. And it's a fantastic ball in from Saka. Nothing extraordinary. It just kind of puts it into an area where Gabriel can glance his header in front of the defenders and our defending situation. And if we move it forwards one more frame, this is where I think the first foul is. And it's where Arsenal's dark arts kind of gets labelled. And do I think this is a foul? Yes. Do I think it was a complete 100% foul? That's to be argued, but I do think it is a foul. When you're pushing someone in the back, look, Paqueta makes a meal of it, of course, but Paqueta goes up to head the ball. And you can see there, I think it's Timber in that frame that's just nudged Paqueta off balance. So is it a foul? Yes. Would it be a soft foul? Yes. But it's still a foul. And that should have been given before Gabriel even makes contact with the header. It doesn't get given. You can see Paqueta's in the air there. And Gabriel, as I mentioned, has that free header at it because they've blocked off the front post, and he just glances it to Fabianski's right-hand side and into the net, and Arsenal 1-0 up. So there were a few difficulties I had with that. Looking at it back, I do think it is a foul on Lucas Paqueta, to be honest. But defensively, we weren't good enough. Antonio should have stayed with Gabriel where possible. But again, Arsenal make it very difficult. They're very good at set pieces. One thing I will say with Arsenal set pieces is the referee allowed them to take a long time for every single set piece, whether that be a throw in, corners specifically. I think they were averaging around a minute per corner, which is insane that it was allowed to do that. And you can see from those screenshots, they start at the back post, they move in field, 5-second difference from that frame, and the ball still hasn't been kicked from Saka. So I do think there needs to be a little bit more of a tightening up on that, because if Arsenal are having 10 corners in this game, that's around 10 minutes of stoppages in a game, which is A, ludicrous for supporters in the stadium, and B, it's just, I know what Arsenal are doing. They're trying to lose the concentration and reset and get into a position and lose concentration of West Ham players, so they're not anticipating what's going to happen. Look, it's a good set piece routine. It works for them. But I feel like the officials need to be clamping down harder on that. And I do think it was a foul on Lucas Paqueta. A soft foul, but it was a foul. But again, we found ourselves 1-0 down in a situation where we couldn't afford to against this Arsenal team that are banging form and, defensively one of the best in the league, which we kind of alluded to in the preview as well. But look, at 1-0 down, you're still in the game at that point. So it's about game management. It's about making sure risk versus reward is there. But I just think we weren't good enough. We weren't aggressive enough. We were way too passive on the ball. We allowed Arsenal to control and dictate the tempo of the game. I thought Arsenal were very, very good in what they did, but we allowed them to play that way too easy. And we could have made it a lot more difficult, because I've seen us do it before, but we were just happy to sit in. And that's where the midfield three of Souček, Soler, Paqueta did not work. And Paqueta, for the praise he got on Monday night against Newcastle, deserves criticism for this game because he wasn't good enough. I thought Soler was a little bit better than Paqueta, but that midfield free balance did not work. And again, I mentioned it in the preview, I didn't think it was going to work in this game. I probably would have changed that midfield and brought in someone like Edson Alvarez to play alongside Souček and Paqueta, or Paqueta and Soler. It should have been a more structured midfield. We couldn't afford to, push Souček on and then drop Soler and Paqueta into the deep pivot to try and play, because it just left ourselves way too exposed. And then we weren't good enough on the ball. I thought we were panicky in the first 20, 25 minutes. Kilman in particular, how well he's done for us this season, looked very panicky. There were a couple of occasions where he's just hoofing it back up. Antonio became very isolated. I thought he was one of the better players, to be honest, in the first half, Antonio, but he just had no support around him. And he very quickly became very frustrated and started to give up. And a lot of the players started to walk around the pitch, but that was a little bit later on into the half. But as I mentioned, the intensity wasn't good enough. The structure of our midfield was way too easy to play through. Odegaard, again, we mentioned it in the preview, he's going to drift into that right-hand space and pick up pockets and play between the lines. And we're going to have to be aware of that. And we weren't. And we allowed him to play. We allowed him to get on the ball. We allowed Arsenal to dictate play, switching from side to side. Saka was way too easily isolated with Emerson. We weren't good enough defensively there. And it just worked really, really well. I think Arsenal played really well, but it was fueled by our inconsistencies in our structure defensively. And when we allude to the second goal that Arsenal did, let's kind of take it through frame by frame. So 26th minute of the game, you're thinking, right, time to start imposing ourselves on this game. This is the current structure as we go into this clip. So the dotted line of Bowen, Antonio, Somerville. So that's our technically front three. And then the box midfield three of Paqueta and Souček deep, with Soler as the advanced midfielder. So already there's a discrepancy there between the spaces. It is way too easy for Arsenal to play through. And if you're going to, play this kind of mid to low block that we did in the first half, you have to be a little bit more tight in midfield, because otherwise you're going to give players like Havertz, who we know drops in from the number 9 position. We're going to allow players like Martin Odegaard space and time on the ball. And it just didn't work. And there was just too many passengers in the first half for West Ham. As we move it on to this second clip, what I mentioned before about Saka being way too easily isolated from a defensive perspective. And again, Paqueta on Odegaard, you can see in the middle of your frame there. So Paqueta should be staying with Odegaard here. He has no reason to drop in between the centre-backs or do anything like that. He just needs to stay touching distance with Odegaard. If Odegaard drops deep to get the ball, fine. That's fine, because then Soler can pass on to him. But if he's trying to get in that right space of pocket, which we mentioned in the preview. We need to be very, very careful of that. And it was just way too easy. So one pass through to Havertz, they pass it out wide to Saka, and they get themselves in a really, really good position. And what I mentioned before about Paqueta, this is where the issues start to highlight. So he's kind of just drifted into this position. You're thinking, okay, structurally, this is okay. We've got a good defensive line, but we've allowed Saka to come inside from Emerson. And this is where, Paqueta switching off, even Soler, look, he's not really being effective there. He's just kind of waiting on the edge of the box. If he sees Odegaard there, he should be busting a gut to get and, make that interception. But again, I feel like Paqueta should be a lot tighter to Odegaard here because this is way too easy to play through. And Paqueta being standing in that position doesn't benefit West Ham in the slightest. And, Saka recognizes this. He just plays a simple pass in. And this is what we mentioned again in the preview. If you double up on Saka, there's exactly what Odegaard's then going to drift into that right-hand space for. He's going to find that pocket, and you have to be aware, if you're Lucas Paqueta, of this situation arising. He isn't, and then we move it forward to frame. Odegaard plays a fantastic through ball first time over the top, and Saka makes that darting run inside. Somerville and Emerson are sleeping after Saka's made that movement. Not good enough. Paqueta then realizes, oh, I need to push out to Odegaard now because he's got the ball. He's miles too late, and Odegaard plays a fantastic pass through. And again, you can even see at the bottom of your screen here, Wan-Bissaka. So he knows Trossard's on the back of him here. But West Ham are trying to play this high line-ish, even though we're in a low block. I'm not really sure what we're trying here because there's way too much space and way too much time for Odegaard to make this pass. If we're trying to play an offside trap, it's the wrong play. And we're just sleeping. We're sleeping. Wan-Bissaka, as I mentioned before, is out of position. Saka plays a first-time pass across to Trossard, and it's a simple tap-in for 2-0. And Arsenal in full control of the game at this point. I thought for this goal, Arsenal deserve full credit for the way they moved West Ham to the side, the way Odegaard found that space and highlighted to himself that Paqueta's not going to do that defensive responsibility all the time, and he will switch off in those situations. I thought Saka did really, really well to drift inside and make that 1-2 pass with Odegaard, and obviously Trossard followed it in. But from a defensive perspective, it's just way too easy. If I take it back to this one, where is the structure here? What are we trying to do as a team here? And, you can see Havertz drifting out. Okay, our defense is happy to stay in a back line, but you have to communicate at this point. There's no way you can stay in this shape and then allow Havertz to get into this position here. And then, as I mentioned before, Paqueta then drifts back into this position and Arsenal play this, amazing pass from Odegaard. But it just wasn't good enough. And we were too passive in the way we set ourselves up defensively. And then we tried to be aggressive in moments where we shouldn't have been. And it left us very exposed in midfield. And that's what happens when you don't have a natural six just sitting in front of the back four, trying to, moving side to side, and you don't have that recognition or that game mindset, that in-game mentality to understand, right, this is a dangerous position right now. We need to shift across, or we need to stay on someone like Martin Odegaard, who we know is one of the best creative midfielders in the Premier League, especially in those tight situations. So, yeah, at 2-0, it's pretty much game over at this point, to be honest. There's a chance we can get back into it, but the players' heads dropped. The attitude of the players was terrible after this goal. The reaction was really poor. It was almost a conceding defeat mentality on the pitch, which you never want to do, regardless of the opposition you're playing. And the third goal, this is one of the more frustrating goals that we conceded on Saturday evening. And, it comes from us actually just before this clip. We were pressing in onto Arsenal, and all they do is play a long ball up to Havertz, and then they make movements off. And because of our structure, it's just not good enough. Look, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 5 players to Arsenal's 4. So defensively, we've got the extra player, but we just don't win our balls. We don't win our second balls. And yeah, Arsenal were just a lot stronger in their duels in this situation. They win the initial header from a lump up pitch, and 2 passes later, Saka finds himself in this situation. And that all came from us doing some half-hearted press from Arsenal's throw-in in their half. They kick it long from Raya with one punt forwards to Havertz, and we don't win that duel. We should always be winning that duel. There's no way that Kilman or Todibo should not be dominating Kai Havertz in that situation when they're pressing up behind him, but we just let him have the space. And then obviously 2 frames later, Saka's got into this position. Again, comes inside Emerson way too easily. And what did we just say about Paqueta's defensive discipline? It shows again here as he leaves the leg out. And one thing I will say is, look, it was a penalty. before we get into these. It was a penalty because contact was made, but it's incredibly frustrating. Look, and again, this comes from the officials, but players have to dive to get awarded a penalty. I think that's what's the bigger picture here. But what's frustrating is here, if you've played football, you'll know Saka's gone past Paqueta. There's been the slightest contact. He realizes Emerson's then there to take the ball away from him, and in his second movement, then he flings himself to the floor. So it's not like the contact of Paqueta took him out. He wasn't going blisteringly fast to almost have the momentum of doing that. He cuts inside Paqueta. He feels the contact. He knows Emerson's about to take the ball off him, so he drops himself to the floor, and Arsenal get the penalty. And it was a good penalty. Unlucky from Fabianski. Almost got to it from Odegaard. Surprised Saka didn't take the first penalty, but yeah, Arsenal then found themselves 3-0 up, and it's just an absolute calamity from West Ham. And yeah, as I mentioned, this all comes from our inconsistent press, just being completely vacated in that midfield, not having the structure behind what you're doing, and not winning your duels. Like, that is the bottom line. We weren't aggressive enough. We weren't good enough. And we just got out hustled by Arsenal. We just didn't want it. We just didn't fancy that game. And Arsenal were fantastic in that opening half an hour or so and deserved the 3-0 lead. So you're thinking at that point, it's just damage limitations. Almost, I think every West Ham fan was getting flashbacks to last year when they beat us 6-0. And yeah, let's check when this goal was. 33-36. The next clip I've got here is 34-53. So this is just 1 minute after their third goal's gone in. Look at the space of the midfield that we leave between our defense and our midfield. It's just not good enough. And this is what I'm saying about not having that natural six. And when you have someone like Paqueta dropping deep, you have to have, oh, that's Siri. You have to have a natural six playing alongside him. Otherwise, it won't work. For all the good that Thomas Souček can do, he's not that type of player. He's not a natural six that can scan. He's not a Declan Rice type figure. So if you haven't got someone like that behind you, if you're Lucas Paqueta, these are the spaces you're going to leave. Carlos Soler isn't that player, which is why he's pushed on. But the idea or the mentality from Lopetegui's structure here is, okay, Souček, you go and get yourself involved in the final third. I'm going to trust Paqueta and Soler to build up. But there's no consideration for, okay, what if they turn over the ball? What if we find ourselves in this situation where Arsenal have won the ball? Oh, and then you've got your box midfield of Souček, Paqueta, and Soler in the midfield three there. And then you've got a heap amount of space for Arsenal to operate in. And this is the clear issues with West Ham's system at the moment. And until we address it, we're just going to continue to underperform, and we're going to continue to leak stupid goals and find ourselves in situations like this, where one punt over the pitch, again, Kilman has to deal with this ball better. He misses the ball. Havertz goes through on goal, slots it in, and Arsenal find themselves in absolute dreamland 4-0 up in the 36th minute. And all of that comes from this situation. I mean, it's just inexcusable to be able to allow a team to do this. And look, I get it. You're 3-0 down. You're trying to be a bit more aggressive, but you can't just do this. You cannot do that against a team of Arsenal's quality, any Premier League team really, because you will get punished. And this is the clear issues with Lopetegui's structure at the moment. He doesn't know what the best balance is in that midfield three. And it's why we've seen it chop and change time and time and time again, because we don't know what the best midfield is. Guido's too slow to play as the natural six by himself, which is why he hasn't been playing. Alvarez can't be trusted because he's already got 2 red cards this season. And again, he's not the most mobile or agile of defensive midfielders. So until we address that and until we bring in someone that can play that position, we're going to continue to see ourselves struggle playing under Lopetegui, because Lopetegui's mindset and structure won't change. The personnel needs to change in that midfield for it to work, or at least work to a more functional standard, because what we're seeing right now is not functional and it's not sustainable. And we're going to find ourselves just in this kind of limbo position where we win a game away at St. James's Park because they were, to be honest, pretty subpar. It was a good performance from West Ham, but Newcastle was subpar. We've gone to Crystal Palace and won. Again, we scraped through that, to be honest. And then our other win was Ipswich at home and United at home, where we should have been about 7-0 down in the first half. So there hasn't really been any consistency in West Ham's play this season, and that's reflected in the league position, and that's reflected in the results that we've conceded so far. at home, we've really, really struggled. We've only won 2 games in the league at home. And again, one of those was Man United. The other one against Ipswich, I think that's the only game this season that I can pinpoint and say, yeah, we deserve to win that. Other than Newcastle, maybe, but that's the one where we really dominated the game and deserved to win. Other than that, it hasn't been that at all. And I feel like a lot of the eject feelings that most West Ham fans have right now going to the London Stadium, especially at home, is we're just not seeing enough. We're just not seeing enough behind this team, but that has a lot of quality in it. I think that's the frustrating thing. We've spent a lot of money. I think we've made some very good signings, but it's just not working. And we didn't address what we needed in that midfield. We don't have enough tenacity or dynamism in that midfield three for this functionality of the Lopetegui system to work. And I think that's the biggest issue. But look, we found ourselves 4-0 down. I mean, it was worse than last season. So we found ourselves in a really poor position. And you're thinking, please, no more goals before half time. Just get in at half time and shut up shop and try and hold on to a 4-0 defeat. That was the mindset I was going through anyway, because it was just all over the place. But we did manage to get back into the game with a goal. And yeah, Carlos Soler showed his quality as a midfielder here. And, it's extremely difficult to do this. But again, like, even if this ball got turned over, this is what I want to pinpoint. Like, where's the structure behind it? You can see Souček's just about the furthest forward of this midfield three. And then you've got Paqueta here, who this is the type of position I want Paqueta to be in, but I want a 6 behind him. But yeah, Soler comes in. He actually does a really nice turn on Odegaard to create the space for himself and beat him. And then to see this pass, I mean, it was a really fantastic pass from Carlos Soler. I mean, he plays it through that line of defense between Calafiori and Gabriel. He plays it past Rice's foot as well, spots that run of Wan-Bissaka at the same time. And it was just an outstanding pass, probably the best pass I've seen this season from a West Ham player. And Wan-Bissaka finishes it off to get his second goal of the season. So from that perspective, you're thinking, right, we've got a goal, we've got a consolation goal. Just steady it now, just keep it going, get the crowd behind you, and see what we can do from this game. And we actually do one better than that. And we find ourselves in this situation where Emerson has a free kick. Do I think it was a free kick? No. I think Rice won the ball very cleanly and very fairly. I think the ref gave into the crowd at this point. Again, you speak about the officiating in this game not being good enough, and that was another example of it. But you see here with Emerson, fantastic free kick. You really didn't think he was going to score from here, and I was right behind it where I sit. And it just flies into the top corner off the crossbar. And you can see here just how top bins it was off the underside of the crossbar. Raya was never going to get to it. And you're thinking, right, okay, 5 minutes from half time, we're now got a 2-goal deficit, which it makes it a little bit interesting. So if you can go into this at half time, 2 goals down, there's a slight chance you can get the next goal and maybe apply a little bit of pressure to Arsenal, because they were going to fade. And we mentioned it in the preview. They're going to come out firing. They're going to come out being really aggressive and try and almost finish the game off in the first half or in the first half an hour. And that's pretty much what they did. In the second half, I thought the game was done at that point. They did fizzle out, as did West Ham. It was a really poor showing in the second half. But you're thinking, right, okay, 4-2, we've got a chance here. And then the 5th goal goes in. And again, this is where I think there's inconsistencies in the officials and the officiating and what they're looking for, what they're actually deeming as a foul or an offence, committed offence. Because again, it's a set piece. Of course, it's a set piece. I think Arsenal are a ridiculously frustrating team to play against because they are very good at set pieces. And as I mentioned, they take their time with it. They really do. But you can see here, so the ball's come swinging in. Again, Gabriel's got the run. But you can see here, I think it's on Kilman. He's all over him. Like, he's literally leaped onto his shoulders with his arms to push Kilman down to get where he is in his position, to get so high above everyone. And you can see Fabianski's eyes are on the ball. Gabriel gets there first. And yeah, Fabianski makes really slight contact on Gabriel, to be honest. Gabriel obviously goes rolling around on the floor and Arsenal get the penalty. But you'll see from the reaction, like, okay, 2 things. Number one, Gabriel's reaction on the floor. You can tell instantly that he's not hurt from what's happened. He's felt a scrape on his head and has gone rolling round, those dark arts that we mentioned. And the refs caved into the reaction of the players. And number 2, Gabriel didn't go off the side of the pitch for a head injury. And again, the official, the medical staff of Arsenal didn't come onto the pitch. So if he's rolling around with a head injury like that, A, surely the medical staff should be rushing on, and B, Gabriel should go off the side of the pitch. Neither of those things happened because it wasn't really any contact. It was a slight skim. And we've said it before, contact doesn't equate as a foul. It doesn't mean foul. So I was really disappointed that that was given as a penalty, to be honest. I feel like the referee, again, just gave in to the intensity of what the players were doing, similar to what he did for the West Ham free kick just moments ago. But it's just those inconsistencies in the officiating shouldn't be happening. And, we get a different angle here. This is where Gabriel's arms are in terms of Kilman. How is Kilman meant to jump when a player's pushing him down physically with his arms? Like, how is that allowed to happen? And why is that not deemed as a foul? It doesn't make any sense to me. That is probably the one goal where I'm like, that cannot be given as a penalty, and B, it cannot be given because there's a foul in the build-up. He's literally pushing him down with his arms. So yeah, that was a frustrating one for me. And Fabianski got a hand to the penalty, but Saka slotted it away. 5-2, game over. And yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, the second half, there's not too much to go into. And I don't really want to go into it because it was just a dull affair. And I think both teams kind of conceded that the game was done. But I think there's a lot of frustrating elements of that game. But again, the officiating will be one of the highlights because for both teams, it was poor. And I think for two of Arsenal goals, there should be fouls on West Ham in the build-up of the set play, and the officiating should be stronger on that. But again, like given that tackle from Rice on us for our free kick was never a foul. And he was right in front of it, so I'm not sure how he gave that. But look, balance of play, Arsenal deserved to win. Of course they did. We were way too passive. We were way too inconsistent with our defensive structure, as I've mentioned before, and we just weren't good enough. I think from a tactical perspective, we got it wrong. We started very panicky. We were just kicking long balls up to Antonio, who was completely isolated and trying his best to shrug off Saliba and Gabriel. He did get the better of him on a couple of occasions, but then again, I go back to the officiating. Antonio spun Saliba, is pushing forwards, and he gives a foul. He blows for a foul in the build-up. He doesn't play the advantage. And then Arsenal go and score from the consequence of that, like a minute later. So it has that snowball effect. But look, as I mentioned, we weren't good enough. And I think with Julen Lopetegui in general, we cannot continue to play in this way as a sustainable outcome. It's just not going to work. And until we get that structure behind us, it's not going to work. And, compare it to Arsenal. They played Jorginho and Rice and looked incredibly creative still. They still had Trossard, Saka, Odegaard, Havertz dropping in and being creative. We didn't really have that. We don't have that structure. And if we're trying to play this system where Soler and Paqueta are going to drop deeper and we're allowing Souček to push on a little bit more, you're just going to leave yourself so exposed when you get turned over. And that's really what I feel like Lopetegui is lacking at the moment. We've got this idea or this mentality instilled into this football club at the moment that we want to be high pressing, that we want to, push on and, go man for man in situations and be aggressive. But we're not thinking about the consequences of our actions if it doesn't work. And that's the issues for me. We're trying to be aggressive, but in the wrong moments a lot of the time. And then it just comes down to individual duels. Like I mentioned, for Arsenal's third goal, where they get the penalty, that all comes from a long pump forward from Raya into Havertz and us not winning that duel, and then not winning the second duel, and then not winning the third duel, and then committing a silly foul in the box. So yeah, there's a lot of frustrating things to come out from that game. I don't feel like it was, again, I don't feel like it was, 4 or 5-0 performance at the time it was, but we weren't doing anything going forwards at all, really. I mean, I know we had that disallowed goal that kind of came from a scrappy moment from us, and it was a great finish from Somerville, but other than that, we weren't really creating much, and we were way too passive. And when we did get the ball, Arsenal pressed straight onto us because they knew we were just going to kick it forwards because we didn't know what we were doing and we didn't know how to play out. And when we were trying to play out, we were just missing simple passes and just being a really frustrating team to watch. So look, I'm not going to get too frustrated by it. It was an outcome, I expected Arsenal to win. I think I predicted 3-1 in the preview show, but the manner of the defeat is what's frustrating because the game was already done by half time because of the way we approached it and the way our individual errors seeped through the game. And again, coming back to the officiating, I just think it was really poor from the officials across the board for both teams. So look, we have to move on. We've got a game very quickly against, I think it's Leicester in midweek away. Their first game with Van Nistelrooy at the helm, at home that is, and that's going to be a very challenging game now for West Ham. So there's a lot of pressure now on. We've got through this period. We're going to have Mo Kudus back for the next game, which is massive for us. And there really are no excuses for Lopetegui now to, in these next 4 fixtures, start picking up some points and start imposing ourselves with the squad that we have and with the fixtures we've got coming up. So we've got like Leicester, Wolves, Bournemouth, which isn't an easy game, Southampton. We've got some really winnable fixtures that West Ham should be targeting to win. So look, we're going to see what happens. Personally, I don't think Lopetegui is right for West Ham still. I've said it since day one on TikTok, before he was even signed or appointed as West Ham manager. I didn't think he was the right fit. And we've spent a lot of money trying to implement what he wants. We've spoke about what he got at Wolves and not getting what he wanted, should I say. And he's had the keys really at West Ham to spend a lot of money. We've spent it well in certain areas, but we've neglected kind of the key issues, which is the striker position. Bringing in Fulkirk was the wrong decision, and neglecting that midfield and bringing in Guido, who, again, good free transfer. I actually said he would be one of the best signings or one of the smartest signings for West Ham, but has to be used effectively and shouldn't be relied upon to play as a lone 6. We didn't bring in that tenacious ball carrying 8. We brought in Carlos Soler, who we know is very good and very technical, but he's not that type of player. And then you're playing him with Lucas Paqueta, who, again, is playing deeper but doesn't have that defensive partner because Thomas Souček isn't going to be that one scanning the lines like Declan Rice was yesterday against us. So lot to work on, lots to do, and hopefully we finish this December period strong and, go into the new year in a better position. But time will tell. I'm not going to comment any further on Lopetegui or what I feel like is going to happen. Just going to let it happen, and we'll be here to break it down as usual. But yeah, frustrating 5-2 defeat to Arsenal. I thought they'd fully deserved the win, so fair play to them. They're going to obviously be pushing for that title this season, with City slipping up, and I do genuinely think they have a really good chance with their squad and the way they're playing. And obviously, if they continue with their dark arts that they are doing, they're going to frustrate a lot of teams from away from home. But I do feel like, taking a minute for a corner is just ridiculous, and the way they did time manage the game, it shouldn't really be allowed, but it is. So they're using it to their advantage. So fair play. But look, it's the big games for Arsenal that they need to get over, and going to the Etihad with a point is really good for them, obviously. But they need to start picking up wins against these teams, because I feel like they're going to win the majority of their games anyway against the lesser teams like West Ham. So yeah, I think Arsenal, they need to just focus on that. They're still in the Champions League, of course, as well, still in the cup competition. So they're on course for a very good season, and, they fully deserve the win. So I don't want to take anything away from their performance yesterday. I thought they controlled the first half really, really well. We didn't pick up on Odegaard in those pockets of spaces because of our defensive structure. And I thought Saka was very good as well. I thought Trossard had a very good game. And yeah, just defensively, they just have that structure behind them that physically imposes on teams, and we don't have that. We don't have that authority in a match. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts down below on the 5-2 defeat to Arsenal and what you think is going to come next. Obviously, we've got Leicester, so we'll get our preview out very shortly. I know it's the games are coming thick and fast, but we'll do our best to keep the content coming out on the channel for you guys. So yeah, if you did like this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, as I fully appreciate that. And a lot of work is going into these videos. So yeah, any feedback in the comment section as well. We're reading every comment. We're trying to reply to as many as we can. So we do see your comments, so keep them coming. Even if we don't manage to reply to all of them, we do see them, and they are massively appreciated, whether that's good or bad feedback, constructive, anything is warranted. And yeah, hopefully we learn our lessons from this defeat to Arsenal, and we go into the Leicester game full of confidence, full of a spring in our step. And yeah, we impose ourselves as the dominant club, even though we're away from home, and pick up a vital 3 points that, we're going into this Christmas period now. We have to start picking up points because we don't want to keep getting dragged into that relegation zone, because then things become a lot more precious on someone like Julen Lopetegui. But yeah, if you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like, and I will see you on the next one. Last thing to say, come on, you irons.